bad weather, bad strategies, and just bad luck. This week, I'm chatting all about the British Grand Prix, so get ready because you've been summoned to the Steward's office. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Steward's office. I'm Saira, and this week, F1 headed out to one of the most iconic circuits on the F1 calendar, Silverstone, for the British Grand Prix. Absolutely love this race. It's just magical. Honestly, I genuinely adore it. And there was a whole load going on over this weekend, especially on Sunday race day. Now, before we kick off with all the on-track action, and there was so much of it, especially on race day, going through some of the news and headlines that we've had, I wouldn't say we have a whole load. I think the most that we've heard this week is generally the rumours of Max Verstappen potentially looking at moving to Mercedes, or Mercedes being interested in signing him. I don't know how much stock to put in these rumours. Max's contract and whether he'll move to a different team, and especially Mercedes, is something that's been discussed for the last season when Red Bull started to lose some of the advantage and dominance they had in 2024. It seemed like there were more and more rumours coming up because Max was unhappy with the way the team was and the way the car was, right? They've come up again, especially because Mercedes have yet to re-sign George Russell. We don't know what's really stalling those contract talks. But that's kind of where it's coming from. And I think it was George that was saying the reason he hasn't signed with Mercedes yet is because they might be interested in Max Verstappen. Like I said, I really don't know how much stock to put into these rumours. There is always a chance, right? There's always a small chance that Max might opt to move teams. Same with any driver. But whether he does or not, I couldn't really tell you right now. I want to err more on the side of saying no, he won't move. But I do get it. Red Bull are struggling. It's not been great for them this season, and maybe he might look at a different team to turn things around for him and help him win another title. But yeah, those are the main rumours. And to be fair, Max Verstappen has not given us an outright, no, I'm not interested in Mercedes, I want to stay with Red Bull. I feel like last year he kind of made that clear to the media of, nope, I am staying with Red Bull. My contract's with them. I love this team. I want to stay with them. I feel like we haven't had the same sort of statement this year. And obviously with him, testing GT3 cars, I think it was, and he's done that twice now at least that we know of. Maybe he's looking at different series altogether. I don't know, but we will wait and see what happens there. Bear in mind that Max Verstappen does actually have a contract with Red Bull that's going to go into 2028, I believe. So he's still got a contract with Red Bull. It's just whether or not he opts to end it with them. So, like I said, we'll wait and see. I think once Mercedes make a decision about George Russell, some of these rumours will start quietening down. Let's get in to the on-track drama for the British Grand Prix, though. Like I said, a GP weekend I absolutely love. It is an iconic race. It's been on the calendar every single year since Formula One has been a world championship. 75 years of the British Grand Prix. It's one of those races, I think, it's not just the British drivers that want to win it. The drivers up and down the grid want to, because it's just such an amazing circuit to win at. And yeah, just love the way the cars race around there as well. A really just flowing circuit to watch the cars go around. Let's go into what happened in qualifying though, and bad luck seemed to continue following Franco Colapinto, who ended up spinning and stopping in the gravel during Q1, did some damage to his car, and that was the end of qualifying for him. He ended up qualifying in P20. So yes, not great for Franco Colapinto. Another qualifying that just hasn't gone his way. We had Lance Stroll out in Q1. That Aston Martin is so hit and miss at this point, guys. Gutting that he was out in Q1. This is the team's home race. Their office is literally across the way from the Silverstone Circuit, and I mean it is just over the road. So a lot of home support that they were going to have, and a lot of the workers, the engineers, and everyone that works in that factory being able to be so close to the track. But yeah, gutting for him not to be able to get out of Q1. Ferrari decided to give everyone a heart attack this weekend. Last couple of laps in Q1, everyone seemed to be fueled for 2 fast laps. Lewis did 1 fast lap, which wasn't great, but it was all right. Went for a cool down lap and was getting ready to do another fast lap when his engineer comes on the radio and says, no, you need to pit. And I thought it was so strange at the time. I couldn't figure out why they were doing that because Lewis's time was nowhere near safe enough for him to get out of Q1 and into Q2, right? I genuinely thought he was going to have to exit qualifying. And it was very, very touch and go, right? Very, very touch and go. And I think he was quite lucky with some of the cars that were behind him that couldn't find pace. We ended up finding out that Ferrari had not fueled his car enough for 2 fast laps. So they had to pit him, otherwise he was going to end up stopping on track. I don't even know what to say about that. I hope that there is a day where Ferrari doesn't cause me anxiety. We're still waiting on it. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. We'll wait and see. But yeah, that was really touch and go, guys, and I did not feel well seeing that happen. I think there was good news for Yuki Tsunoda and Carlos Sainz, who ended up qualifying in P11 and P12 respectively. Carlos Sainz, who has not had the best luck, has finally broken the 3-race consecutive streak of exiting in Q1, and for Yuki Tsunoda, who just in general has been struggling since he joined the Red Bull team 2 races into the season. We've not seen him come out of Q3 very much, sadly. So yeah, to see him bumped into Q2 was really nice, and P11 was a decent starting spot for him, I think. When we got to Q3 though, that fight for pole position was so close. The margins were razor thin. It was amazing to watch. But oh my gosh, yeah, you couldn't really put your finger on who was going to end up getting pole. It did end up being Max Verstappen, who was running a very low downforce setup on his car. But I mean, it could have been Oscar Piastri, it could have been Lando Norris, it could have been Lewis Hamilton. I think it was Lando. It was one of the McLarens, and I think it was Lando and also Lewis Hamilton, who made a mistake coming out of the last corner before they hit the start-finish line, and it just cost them that 10th. It was a single 10th for Lewis Hamilton to, get onto the front row, but it did cost them, and that's how fine the margins were. Lando started in P3, Lewis was in P5, so they weren't bad starting positions, but to say that Lewis was a 10th off in 5th place, it really shows how close the field was when it came to qualifying. Let's have a chat about the actual race on Sunday though. Now, normally when I talk about all the chaos and drama in the race, that comes right at the end of me talking about the actual Grand Prix, but I am starting with it this week because there was a lot going on. There's a lot that we need to talk about, a lot that happened that comes under chaos and drama, so that is where we are going to start. And all of it kicked off, really, because the good old British weather carried on doing what it did best, and it rained in July. Absolute sunshine around the race weekend, but when it hit the actual race, pouring down with rain. The F3 race was red flagged and then was abandoned because of the rain. F2 had a lot of accidents and safety cars and everything because of the rain. The grid for F1 was starting off on intermediate tyres because it was just wet. The track was just wet. There was no way the drivers were going to survive on slick tyres, to the point that they did actually do the formation lap behind a safety car. The race director genuinely thought the track was wet enough that he wanted the safety car to be out for the drivers. And the rain was on and off throughout the entire race. There wasn't enough sunshine or wind or anything to dry the actual track. We've seen it in other races where it has rained and the sun coming out has just helped really get a dry line on the track, making it easier for the drivers. It just didn't really happen. It was still damp by the end of the race. But like I said, we started off behind a safety car, drivers were on intermediate tyres. It wasn't raining, to be fair, but the track did not look in the best condition. Next thing you know, after the formation lap, 7 cars, I think, came in to pit straight away to swap from the intermediate tyres onto the slick tyres. We had 14 drivers on the grid actually starting, everyone else in the pit lane. A brave choice, in my opinion, and I don't know what data or what feedback maybe the drivers were giving the strategy team to think that it was gonna work. Evidently, it did not work. You could tell when they came out of the pits, when the lights had gone out and the drivers who were on the grid started the race, the rooster tail of water that was coming off of these cars, there's no way you're driving slick tires on that. Like, I don't drive an F1 car, and I could tell you, no, we're not doing slick tires on a track like that. And those slick tire runners really found that out quickly. They were slipping, they were sliding, and I think at one point some of those slick tire runners that had pitted after the formation lap were around about 10 seconds a lap slower because they couldn't get the grip, and you'd rather drive slower than end up in a wall. And that early pit stop for those slick tire runners, it really did cost them because a lot of them couldn't really recover their race afterwards because they were kind of out of sync when the rest of the drivers were going into the pits and out of the pits because it was time to move on to slick tires or get a new set of intermediates because the rain was coming down again. It really put those drivers out of sync and they had lost a lot of time with those extra pit stops. I think the one that probably did all right was George Russell. And even then, I mean, he was starting on the second row and definitely did not finish on the podium. It did cost him a fair bit. But I mean, Charles Leclerc was another driver that pitted after the formation lap and he finished in P14. So it did not benefit a lot of the drivers. I genuinely don't know what possessed them. It was a bit of a strategy disaster class, I can't lie, but we live and we learn, I guess. Unsurprisingly, we had a couple of incidents. Tends to happen in the rain, especially when some teams opt for slick tyres when it's not time for them. And just in general, we do tend to get it because some parts of the track are more slippery than others, and you don't always know what your car's going to do in those conditions. So let's run through some of those incidents. Okay, the first one actually isn't an incident, but we are going to chat about Franco Colapinto before I talk about all the incidents. And like I said, he ended up crashing in Q1, having that spin off into the gravel, was going to have to start P20. Ended up being that the team had to break park firmly on the car because there were a lot of parts that needed to be repaired on his car, and he was going to start from the pit lane. Franco Colapinto did not start the British Grand Prix. He went into second gear, got stuck in second, and couldn't move the car. You just have to feel for him right now because, my goodness, is the bad luck just sticking with him like glue at this point. Like, I don't even know what to say. This has been an absolute nightmare from the minute he's gotten into the Alpine seat, and he's had no sort of reprieve from it. I feel like Flavio Briatore also is getting more and more antsy about Colapinto being in that car. And I mean, the question is, what do you do if you want to boot out Colapinto from that car? What do you do? Who do you get in that? Do you put Jack Doohan back in? There are whispers that Valtteri Bottas might be going into that seat. I really do not know, but it's really not looking great for him, guys. I mean, a crash in Q1, you've spent all that money on parts then to repair the car just for him to stall, not be able to get out of second gear, which I do think is more of a car issue than a Franco issue. Don't know whether Briatore is going to see it that way, though. So, yeah, bad luck, and he was not able to race a single lap of the British Grand Prix. Going into the incidents, when we hit the track, though, Liam Lawson, who also is a rookie that's not been having the best of luck, booted out of the Red Bull seat, only managed to score his first points of the season last race. Him and Esteban Ocon had an incident that caused Lawson to go over the gravel. Ocon was sandwiched between two cars. He didn't have anywhere to go. It wasn't done on purpose, to be fair. We had a yellow flag while Lawson tried to get going again, which turned into a VSC and Liam Lawson retiring from the race. At that restart, we immediately had Gabriel Bortoleto off track. He was one of the drivers that was on the slick tires, and slick tires on a restart when the track is still wet with a rookie kind of feels like a recipe for disaster. He ended up with massive damage to his rear wing, managed to keep going until his race engineer was like, you know what, just retire the car, don't come into box, because the drivers also can get penalised for driving with the car in an unsafe condition. So Gabriel Bortoleto out of the British Grand Prix. That's 3 of our rookies already gone. Later on in the race, the rain absolutely started bucketing it down. In true British style, it just was pouring down, right? To the point, visibility looked absolutely awful. And that was us watching people on a screen. We weren't in the cars at the end of the day. But Isaac Hadjar could not see the car in front of him, couldn't even see the red flashing brake lights of the car in front of him when it wasn't that far away from him. And he ended up going into the back of Kimi Antonelli. Awful damage for Isaac Hadjar, because after he went into the back of Antonelli, he did spin off and have massive damage to the car, so he was an immediate retire, in my opinion, right? And maybe this is controversial. Maybe some people would be like, no, it's fine. But I think if a driver can't even see the car that is ahead of them, that's not miles and miles ahead of them, you know, not that far, easy enough for them to overtake. If you can't see that car, I feel like it might be time to red flag the race. I just feel like it might be a better idea than having drivers go into the back of other cars, because it could have been a worse accident. And I know some people will be like, nope, it's not needed. Nobody wants to see a race restart. But to be fair, one, which is the most important thing, I'd rather all the drivers be safe. Then it's I'd rather all the cars be in one piece. And then I would also really like to actually have racing laps instead of laps behind a safety car. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I don't feel like it was the right decision just to be behind the safety car. The cars were still struggling to see anything. Anyway, Kimi Antonelli did manage to run for a few laps, but in the end he also had to retire because of damage to the floor after that incident. 5 rookies out of the British Grand Prix. Ollie Behrman was the only rookie left. And to be fair, it must have felt great for him in general being able to finish the British Grand Prix, but yeah, this British Grand Prix really did not like any of the rookie drivers, bar Ollie. I could not believe it. I had us down, right, when the race started, my sister had asked me, how many drivers do you think are going to end up retiring and DNFing from the race because of the race conditions and everything? And I said, I think we'll end up with 16 drivers on the grid by the end of this race. I wasn't that far off, to be fair. We ended up with 15. I am gutted for those rookie drivers, though, because Silverstone's also a circuit that they know really well. It's one they've raced around in their junior career, and to be able to do that in an F1 car must have been amazing. And also because you know that circuit, you know the track a little bit better, but races cut very short for those drivers. Other than that, though, we had Oscar Piastri got a 10-second time penalty. Now, at one of these race restarts, because we had a couple of them. Now, at one of these safety car restarts, after the safety car had come in, Oscar Piastri had slowed down massively. It ends up causing Max Verstappen to overtake him, which he's not allowed to do. And then Oscar carried on picking up the speed. Race control ended up picking up on that, said it was a really dangerous thing to do because of how hard Oscar basically slammed on the brakes, and ended up giving him a 10-second time penalty. That was while Oscar was in the lead of the race. Basically meant he was not going to win the race after that. Other driver that got a 10-second time penalty, sadly, was Yuki Tsunoda. He ended up having a bit of an incident with Ollie Behrman that caused Ollie to have to go into the runoff area. Didn't have to retire like the other rookies, but the stewards did deem Yuki Tsunoda at fault for that and gave him a 10-second time penalty. So yeah, a lot to keep an eye on during the British Grand Prix. A lot that just went on, especially for the rookies. But let's have a chat about our championship leaders, and kicking off with Lando Norris, who is the new winner of the British Grand Prix, his first British GP win. An amazing race from him, a really, really good weekend from him. He, yes, did benefit from the penalty that Oscar Piastri got, because Oscar, I think, finished, I want to say it was either 6 or 7 seconds behind Lando Norris. So without that 10-second time penalty, there is a very good chance that Oscar would have been ahead of Lando. But beyond that, though, yes, the penalty benefited him, but Lando still had to drive a clean race, had to make sure to keep the car on track, and he did all of those things, and he did them well. He is now only 8 points away from Oscar Piastri in the Drivers' Championship. He's really managed to close that gap down, couple of good weekends from him outscoring Oscar Piastri. It could see him in the lead again, but that's going to be a massive boost for Lando, his side of the garage, his team and family and friends and everything, to only be 8 points away. That's a tiny margin. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there, but great to see Lando win his first ever British Grand Prix. His teammate Oscar Piastri had a bit more of a messy race. I think there were some points where he had gone off track. That 10-second time penalty wasn't great. Was very cheeky on the radio, right? At one point towards the end of the race, he'd basically turned to his engineer and said, look, if you think that 10-second time penalty was unfair and everyone agrees it was unfair, maybe we should swap positions with Lando at the end of the race. Nice try, Oscar. I don't think he thought that was going to happen realistically, and it shouldn't have. At the end of the day, you can't punish your other driver for a mistake one of your drivers has made. It's not fair at the end of the day. So they didn't do that. Can you blame a guy for asking though? I guess not. But yeah, this was not the best weekend for Oscar Piastri. That win, I think, could have been his, but yes, slowing down to that extent was quite intense. Whether or not he actually deserved 10 seconds as a time penalty as opposed to 5 seconds or something, I would probably need to read into the sort of regulations and rules a little bit more. I know a lot of people think it was a bit too harsh. I do get it, because slamming on the brakes is dangerous on top of it being in wet conditions. What's done is done though, and look, I don't think it's something that Oscar is going to really hold on to in the coming races. I think he's just going to carry on getting on with the job that he has to do, and we will see what happens when we come back to racing, because we have a little bit of a break as well. And then for third place in the Drivers' Championship, Max Verstappen, who also had a miserable race. Now bear in mind, I said Oscar Piastri had a bad race. He at least finished on the podium. He was in P2. Max Verstappen, after the incident with Oscar Piastri and the restart actually happened, Max ended up spinning and falling back into P10. Podium was off the cards after that. He was massively complaining about the car. He was not happy with it, and are we surprised? Because Red Bull came with the lowest downforce setup out of any of the teams. And I mean, Christian Horner said they had gone for Monza levels of downforce at this circuit. Monza is where we get the most amount of downforce out of any of the circuits on the calendar. It is the track that requires the most amount of speed. There are so many straights that you need that downforce. Why they would do that in Silverstone, in the rain, I'm not sure. It was a choice they made, and it did not work out, let's be honest. And Max was not a happy bunny in that car. Wasn't happy with the upshifts, wasn't happy with how the car was driving. He said he just felt slow when he had that spin and he was trying to work his way back up. He was just like, I can't do it. It's just slow. So it's been a real chore for him over the British Grand Prix. P5 still isn't bad. He is not within 200 points. So the McLaren boys both have over 200 points in the Drivers' Championship now. I think Max Verstappen is on something like 168, around about that number. So he's not even broken into the 200 mark. And don't get me wrong, anything can happen within the season. Red Bull might figure out what's going on with the car and fix it. McLaren might suddenly lose pace. Realistically, do I think Max Verstappen is fully in this championship battle anymore? No. I don't think anyone really sees that happening. It still could, but I just realistically don't think there is a chance of it happening. And I don't think it's going to be long until we see mathematically Max unable to fight for a championship anymore. I just can't get over Christian Horner saying Monza levels of downforce at Silverstone in the rain. I can't wrap my head around it and understand it, guys. I would love to know why that decision was made, if I'm honest with you. Moving on to two of the teams I want to speak about that are battling out in the Constructors' Championship, and we'll kick off with Ferrari, who had a little bit of a mess. I already said they gave me a bit of anxiety during Q1. Glad that that's over with, but the rest of the weekend, being the race, was also not the best for them. Don't get me wrong, right? The new upgrade package that they brought to Austria does still seem to be working. It seems to be working in Silverstone. It was working in Austria. So that's 2 races where it looks like it is giving the team more pace. Big positive. Also looks like Lewis Hamilton is getting used to the car a little bit more and understands how to drive it. Big positive. Everything else was a bit interesting. Kicking off with Charles Leclerc, who, like I said, pitted after the formation lap and had a miserable race after that. And I mean, yeah, he finished in P14, not near the points. That was with 5 rookies that ended up being out of the race. It was gutting for him, but he said during the race, like, I don't have any speed. In his post-race press conferences when they're in the media pens, he was like, look, there really aren't many positives I can take from this weekend. The only positive I can take is that Lewis had good pace, and I can at least look at his data and figure out what went wrong with things like setup. And my hat's off to Charles, the fact that he's willing just to be like, I didn't have a good race. My teammate had a better race, so I may as well learn off that data. But P14 is awful, and he was another driver that was not happy down the radio. P4 for Lewis Hamilton. Not a bad result. I think myself and a couple of other people are going to be disappointed that he wasn't on the podium, because that ends his streak of 12 consecutive podiums at Silverstone. Absolutely gutted for him. It was still a good race though, and I don't think we can take that away from Lewis. The car seemed a lot better and he seemed really, really comfortable with it. Didn't seem to work it as much as he's had to and work the steering wheel as hard. He seemed a lot more comfortable in it. So I think that's a big, big thing he can take out of this weekend. But both him and Charles have said there are problems and they need to sit down and talk to Ferrari about it and figure out where to go. So we'll see what happens there. On the upside as well, though, for Ferrari, they have pulled away from Mercedes in the championship. Last race, they were only a point ahead of Mercedes. That gap has widened a little bit, which I'm sure is a relief to Ferrari. Work still needs to be done though. Then Mercedes in P3. Now, if Ferrari had a bad sort of race, Mercedes, it was awful. I don't understand, guys, because they had both of their drivers on a very, very similar strategy. Now, with Ferrari, Lewis said he didn't want to pit after the formation lap, so they didn't pit him, but they did opt to pit Charles Leclerc. Split the strategy and it worked for them, because if one strategy didn't work, hopefully the other one would. Mercedes opted to pit both of their drivers and put them on slick tyres, which wasn't a decision that worked. And because you didn't have one driver on an alternate strategy, both of them are just struggling and you can't learn from the other driver during the race then. Toto just looked like he was gonna give up at one point in the race. They panned to him, I think it was after the incident from Kimi Antonelli and Isaac Hadjar, and when Kimi had to retire. Honestly, I think Toto was just ready to go home at that point. It was a really tough race for them. Let's have a chat about midfield battles though, and I can't lie, I'm going to say that this was midfield because the team is, this driver was not this race. Nico Hülkenberg managed to get his first ever career podium this weekend after 239 races. I can't imagine how that felt for him, but yeah, 239 race starts and he finally finished a race on the podium, finished in P3 in the Sauber. An incredible performance from him. Strategy worked out well. He drove a really good race in terms of just not having those accidents and spins that other drivers were. Kept it calm and cool, and yeah, an amazing, amazing result for Nico Hülkenberg and the entirety of Sauber and his family. Loved the fact that Mercedes and Aston Martin sent over some more champagne to the Sauber garage because they only had 2 bottles, and Mercedes and Aston Martin gave them some more so they could really, really celebrate and enjoy that. I don't think anyone was expecting it. It was really nice to know that Kevin Magnussen was in the garage as well watching that. And Gabriel Bortoletto's current teammate, absolutely over the moon for him. He was on the radio to Nico after the race finished, and you can see him in one of the interviews where they're just under the podium. You can see Gabriel Bortoletto sprinting to get to Nico Hülkenberg, but honestly, it's just a really feel-good story for Formula One, I think. And with that podium, Sauber have now got more points than Red Bull in the last 4 races. They have 35 points over the last 4 races, and Red Bull have only managed to score 29 in the last 4. I don't know what dimension I'm living in, that I've just said that Sauber has outscored Red Bull over the last 4 races. What is going on this season, guys? Honestly, it's been wild. And we're halfway. We're only halfway. It's just gonna get worse, isn't it? Other than that, though, midfield-wise, Pierre Gasly in the Alpine had a really good race as well. He finished in P6. Now, he didn't pit during the formation lap like some of the other drivers, which definitely helped him out. Had a really, really good start, and yeah, a brilliant race from him. And we had double points from Aston Martin. There was a point where Lance Stroll was even running in the podium positions. He was in P3. But both of their drivers ended up in the points. I know Fernando Alonso was not happy with his strategy down the radio. He was annoyed, is putting it lightly, but not impressed with the strategy they had him on. He didn't understand, and he just felt like it was always him getting these bad strategy calls, but still managed to end up in the points. And I think this is why races like this, where the weather conditions are a little bit tricky, strategy becomes trickier because of it. It really gives a chance to those midfield teams who might not be able to get on a podium, who might not be able to be in places like P4, P5, P6. It gives them such a good chance to get a good haul of points in for their team, because things will rely on strategy, how well you cope with the rain and the wet weather, the risks you opt to take and opt not to take. And it really challenges how much the drivers know their own racing knowledge, how much they trust the drivers around them. And yeah, we get just amazing results like Nico Hülkenberg in P3 in a Sauber. Now, before we do finish this episode, let's run through our winners and losers from the British Grand Prix. Starting off with our winners, and of course Nico Hülkenberg is in there. Need I say more about this man? P3, 239 race starts later. Also on that list is, of course, Lando Norris. First British GP win, has really started to build up momentum since the last race, and he seems so much happier. Also, because I didn't mention this before, that photographer that fell on Lando Norris and ended up injuring his nose, that's also just some bad luck. Glad Lando is okay, though. I think he's just got a bit of a cut on his nose. I know the photographer didn't mean to, obviously, but glad to know everyone is okay after that. But those are my 2 biggest winners, I think, from this GP. In terms of losers, Max Verstappen, I think he had a really good chance of finishing in the podium positions, and yeah, that really uncharacteristic spin from him did cost him. And also on the losers list, I do have Charles Leclerc, P14. Strategy was not a great call, even though they did split it, was not the best call from them. And as well as that, we have Oscar Piastri. I know he finished in P2, which is really decent, like it's a really good result to finish on, but that 10-second time penalty cost him a win. I genuinely do think that. So yeah, he is on the losers list. And because he really wasn't happy with that after the race, you could tell. But that was the British Grand Prix. We have a little bit of a break now. I think it's like 2 weekends where we don't have a race. And then I think it's Spa that we head to, which will be an interesting one. I think it's going to start rotating with Zandvoort from next year, so it won't be on the calendar every year from next year. Gutting, but Spa is also one that does make me a little bit nervous because of the accidents that we've had there. Hopefully everything will be okay for the drivers when we head there in a couple of weekends' time. We are rumoured to have more Ferrari upgrades coming. I think it's going to be like the last big update, because I think after summer break, a lot of the teams are going to be switching over to the 2026 cars with the new regulations coming in as well. But apparently Ferrari are bringing in new suspensions for their car. So fingers crossed that helps some of their problems. Do I think it's going to? Absolutely not. But we'll wait and see what happens there. But thank you guys so much for listening, and diolch yn fawr. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. It really does mean a lot. And if you're on YouTube watching this, please subscribe or comment. Honestly, they really, really do appreciate it. But I will see you guys the next time you're summoned to the steward's office.